In our last video, we talked about how the stock market could be making some big move higher, and we kind of talked about how the MACD could roll up and go positive here, meaning we might even get a new all-time high soon. This is overall looking like the RSI could get above 50. So if we're seeing so much upside, why is there possibly some problems in here as we get into the shorter time frame? So we're going to talk about the shorter time frames because it looks like some kind of pullback might be coming, which could be some bad news for Monday. So stick with us while we do some technical analysis for the SPY Qs, Apple, Tesla, Amazon, NVIDIA, AMD, and Meta going forward, and let's get into those shorter time frames. As we go into a 2 hour on the SPY, the first thing we got to do, we got to get you those weekly ranges. So on this channel, we give you the weekly ranges. This is what's priced in by the options market by Friday close, and you're seeing to the upside 517.04 to the upside, and we have 499.48 to the downside for the SPY. So this is just saying, hey, the options market is pricing in this big of a move, and if we see a reaction more than that, then there's a 68% chance we land back within these purple lines. So they're very, very powerful to have, and we even give you the daily expected moves on this channel. So subscribe if you like daily expected moves, because this is what the options market is pricing in for Monday, and you see just a little bit of upside here, 510.98 to the upside for Monday, and then we have 505.54 to the downside. So still a little bit of a move, but we could see ourselves get excited outside of this and then come down. We could get excited of this and go out, and then you have a 68% chance to land back in this zone. Now, that being said, if we are going to see some kind of rolling over of this 2 hour, we're going to start to get into technicals here. We are looking a little flaggy in here, and we could head to lower levels. So what does that mean for Monday? That means if I get outside of this, well, now we can use this as resistance. So if it's not able to buy back up in it, this might not have a next leg higher on a 30-minute or anything like that. We're going to go into the 30-minute to really show you why this 2 hour can curl over. But I just want you to know that if you're going to go below this and you're not able to buy back up, you most likely will reject. You can use these levels now as some resistance once you get below them, and then we could see something bad happen there. So if we are going to see some negativity, you could see a gap below this. There's plenty of stuff to learn when it comes to weekly ranges, and that's why the course right now is 149 down in the description. But right now we're talking about this 2 hour. What's happening here? Well, it could curl over going into negative territory, and when we go into negative territory, we test the previous low. Okay, so we could test the previous low. If this wants to curl over and go negative, we could test this low right here. We could make a new one from that low, which would maybe even test this one right here. So I'm saying what could happen going on into Monday, maybe even going on into Tuesday, maybe even until we get that Fed interest rate decision. I'd really be paying attention for a move outside of these weekly ranges. The 2 hour looks like it wants to curl over on the MACD. It's right by that center line. The RSI can get below 50, and then maybe we create a point of divergence down here where the real bounce is coming. I'm not saying that we're not going to bounce ever again. I'm just saying, hey, we might need to base out a little bit stronger, get some divergence or some kind of double bottom down here before that happens. Now, the reason that I'm pointing out all of this is because of how the 30-minute looks. The 30-minute is showing you a pretty good divergence here, okay? Nothing too crazy, so this could just be a pullback, right? You have almost flatness, but a little down on the MACD, and then you have down on the RSI. So it's definitely down on the RSI. So what can we pay attention to? Well, if this is just going to be a pullback and then we're going to continue upward, what's going to happen from here? Well, most likely we do see that resistance come in right now. We see some selling off, and then that curls back up. What do I pay attention to? This curling back up into positive territory. This would be a much better entry than entering, on the end of Friday. That's what I would say. So we're looking for some kind of beatdown to get us back up and curl back up into positive territory on this MACD, get the RSI to cross back above that center line. All of that would be good news for another move higher. Why? Because we'd be crossing up into positive territory, and that would mean we're still in a positive trend as of right now. So if this is actually going to go fully negative for some time here and break through this trend, well, then you're going to test this low, and you have to see, is that curling up at that moment, or is it going to drop even further? So if anyone was going short in this area, a good thing to do would be watch it to drop. Just watch it drop down and then see if that's able to curl back up. Anytime that's able to curl back up, hey, this is how I would get screwed out of the trade. So I am not taking any downside from here because we could head upward if we're close to that positive territory. So as of right now, though, you have divergence here on the 30-minute, and that really likes to curl over that 2 hour, which is very close to negative territory. So it's starting to make me lean towards some kind of pullback going on Monday to Tuesday, and then we see maybe a basing out structure around here and get some good earnings. Hopping into the Qs, I want to give you those weekly ranges, right? So this is what the options market has priced in for upside 441.06. Notice one thing quick. Remember, we've been pointing out that 438.28 is very important. If we can end above that, say on Friday, that would be very, very good news for the stock market, and we're most likely going to see a new all-time high in the Qs. So keep this line right here on your charts, kind of a good line in the sand. If we use that as rejection from there, that would be bad. But going into the bottom side of our weekly expected moves, you have 420.94. So if we get outside of that, look for a bounce, especially if it happens early on in the week. We talk about all this stuff live. So if you're having trouble understanding any of this, or you want to learn more about this, or you just want to ask about the course since it's at a discount right now, you can come any single morning and just ask questions. We answer tons of questions. We're usually live for 2 to 3 hours, so you can look at that. But I just wanted to point out how the MACD here, not really showing that divergence, right? Not really getting that divergence at this level, but you do have it on the RSI. So what that leads me to believe is this actually has a high probability to be a pullback for the Qs. So you may have a situation where the SPY drops down lower, but the Qs are able to base out a little bit higher up. So we'll pay attention to that. And all we have to do in order to know that the next leg is coming, well, we just have to see this beat down and then curl back up into positive territory. Most of the time when you do get that curl back up into positive territory, you're continuing that positive trend because you're up in this area. Kind of like down here, every single time we cross over in negative, what do? We drop lower every single time. That's what could happen in this, but you do have flagging at this point. So to look at this, we would just want to say, first of all, pay attention to Monday, because if this quickly happens, then it might just reverse around. We pay attention to that crossing of the MACD. So we need some levels to pay attention to. 430, 437 to the upside, and we have 427.63 to the downside. So the options market only pricing in this much price action for Monday. So if we are going to see a pullback, that could last into Tuesday if that's just kind of gradual, and then we could see that curl back up. So just pay attention to that. But what could the 30-minute do? It still could roll over this 2 hour. I still want to show you how close to the 2 hour, or how close to the center line the 2 hour really is. It's right there. All you need is 4 hours of selling, and guess what? You're going to cross, and then guess what? You're testing this low, or you're going to make some kind of divergence down here, and that's truly what I believe. If we're not going to form that divergence, you're just going to see this thing keep going and get very oversold. But as of right now, I'm not seeing any news that could really cause any terrible news, right? Terrible price action. So I'm really leaning towards maybe this curling up into positive territory on the 30-minute, or us setting up some kind of divergence on the 2 hour. And then as we flip around, you're going to see a lot of stocks that look like they need to curl down, right? The Apple's just been trickling higher, and this has some good signals. First of all, before I talk about any downside, I just want to show you guys Apple giving you a divergence as of right now. So we do have a pretty steep divergence down here, and it's very significant on the RSI. We talk about this in the course, the significance of those divergences, and this one is very significant on the RSI, and it's pretty dang good on the MACD. So this has a good opportunity to go positive here, meaning what? Positivity in that positive territory. So we want to pay attention for an entry. And at this point, you would say, well, the 2 hour looks like it wants to cross down and go negative, so maybe this isn't the moment to get in. But maybe if that is able to curl down for a few days and then curl back up, we want to be careful around that earnings. But if that's able to beat down and curl back up, it looks like a good trade from the momentum perspective. Now, earnings is a 50-50 split. We do get this after hours on Thursday, so pay attention to that. Friday morning is going to be some crazy price action. We get Fed rate decision, we get a bunch of earnings this week, and we even get more data after that. So we're going to be paying close attention to the data, close attention to if we're curling over and able to curl back up into positive territory, then you're not going to make that divergence, right? We're going to see the next move higher most likely if we cross up into positive territory here. But if we keep breaking down, well, then this is when a lot of people would be going maybe short on the stock. They would think, hey, this thing's going to die out. Okay, I'm going to go short here, and then boom, they are trapped. And then maybe earnings actually comes out as good. But that is a maybe. It's a 50-50 shot. I won't be trading around earnings. Maybe take a small down play here, but then just get away from it when earnings comes up. I'm not going to mess up my portfolio because of some kind of earnings giving me a 50-50 flip. Tesla, we're going to go into the 30-minute for this one, and it's a little different story. You notice that the MACD is a little bit further up into positive territory. So what does that mean? It means anywhere in here, we can just curl back up into positive territory. Let me get rid of this weekly. We gave you the weekly top side for Tesla last week, but you can get all those on Patreon down in the link in the description if you want the individual stocks weekly ranges. But this thing could curl down, and then maybe we see some support around this gap support. Okay, we could find some there. We could head all the way down to that gap. It's not unheard of, but I really think we're going to see this start to base out somewhere in this area and then curl back up for that next move higher. The reason I'm saying that for Tesla is because it's a lot like Apple at this point. It has a triple divergence. So you have a triple divergence down here on the MACD and the RSI, and they're at the same time. So that just tells me if I get above a level that I'm paying attention to, well, I could be seeing above 180.92. Very, very bullish move coming if we get above that level. Now, we want to go into these shorter time frames. I just wanted to show you that divergence real quick. Notice the 30-minute was able to curl down, so it does have the opportunity even right now to head higher if it just wants to cross up into positive territory. Now, I'm still thinking we might need to grab some more buyers around some liquidity zones, right? Maybe right in here is a good area. Maybe we go for a test of our little gray zone, the top of it, and then we see that thing curl back around. But I think the 30-minute curls down, curls back up. You got a good shot that this thing is going to test this high or go make a new one, and maybe we want to test 180.92 early in the week. I would be paying attention to my upside expected moves for Tesla this week. Amazon, when we talked about it live, it was kind of struggling. It was kind of struggling to try to test this high, and right now it has. So if you wanted structure, Amazon could give it to you with a little pullback here. And you notice this, it's still up in positive territory. So even the SPY and the Qs, they're high up there. So we really want to pay attention to some kind of higher low. But for Amazon, you're going to want to pay attention to that as well, because you have some good structure in here. You can see it. You got the left, you got the head, and you got the right shoulder. The coolest part about Amazon was the weekly range for it last week. We came below that for just a brief, like 5-minute moment. And if you were able to buy that up at that point, test that 166.12. We almost tested it to a T. We've been telling you about this level for a long time. And guess what? We almost come all the way down to it. We're just short of it, but we come outside that weekly range. What happens? We see the buying up from there. So this was a great little trade if you wanted to take a chance on it. But now we do have the structure to head higher. If we wanted to see some kind of pullback, we grab some liquidity in here. You would have a nice head and shoulders to actually head higher. Now we want to pay attention to Amazon because we don't want to get too bullish or get too bearish. We have something called earnings, which is a 50-50 flip. So if you want, you can flip a coin, and that's what direction the stock is going to go, pretty much. Like, honestly, you just want to stay away from earnings for the most part. You will be a better trader if you're able to kind of just navigate around earnings or even just go away, because I've traded around earnings before. A lot of you guys know some of my losses, and a couple of those were with earnings, and one of my biggest ones was on an earnings. So I don't mess around with this anymore. Learn from my mistakes. Trade something else unless you are very confident in this structure. NVIDIA is one that I'm convinced will get a higher low. So I am convinced that this is in a positive trend. We can see it way up here on the MACD, but we're kind of cooked on the RSI, which just tells me, hey, we could get some roll down. Now, when you break through an important zone like this, we talked a lot about this stuff with Apple. When you break through an important zone like this, a lot of the time you like to dink in the top of it before you make the next move higher. So I'd just be paying attention to if that happens. And the main thing to pay attention to if that happens is the 30-minute rolling down towards the center line and then curling back up into positive territory. Now, something we'll have to be careful later on this week might be if NVIDIA actually curls down and then curls back up into positive territory. We could see some divergence for a more meaningful pullback at that point, or a trend reversal. So be very, very cautious with this. I just wanted to peek at it on the 2-hour and show you guys, even though that 30-minute looks pretty high up there, you have to be aware of this. If the 2-hour crosses over, what's likely to happen? Well, you're going to test a low, and then you're maybe going to make a new one, possibly giving a double bottom, right? We can test the previous low right in here, curl down, negative territory is there. So if you get into negative territory here, you actually might make a divergence at this low, giving you some kind of double bottom before you head higher, giving you a sturdier base though. So pay attention to that, but you did get outside of any flagging that was going on here. So it really looks like the 30-minute just wants to curl back up and continue that positive trend. Keep that in mind for NVIDIA. It looks pretty bullish from this area. And the reason that I'm telling you it looks pretty bullish is because this is a great beatdown. It looks like it just wants to cross up on this MACD. So if you see one day of consolidation or some kind of dip down and then buying up and then boom, this thing takes off, well, you can cross on this daily MACD, and that means that momentum might very well be shifting up, and we could see NVIDIA hit 1,000. So I just want you to be aware of the way that NVIDIA could go up, but be open to the fact that it can cross over on the 2-hour to the downside so you don't get caught up in too many traps or anything like that. AMD showing a very, very similar thing. There's just one big difference here with AMD, which is you're still within some flagging here for AMD. So just be a little bit careful. Remember, this one has earnings on Tuesday as well, kind of with Amazon. And what we want to pay attention to, a 30-minute. This 30-minute here just trickling higher. Can that cross over and go negative at this point? That's really what I'm paying attention to. No real divergences here, and it is able to hold up. So you have a good likelihood that this flagging will not play out. Okay, I wanted to point that out But you can notice how if we curl down, what would we do? All we have to do is pay attention to this, see if it's able to curl back up, maybe after earnings or something like that. If it's around earnings, I won't be messing around with it. You know, AMD, I took this off of my trading list, but I know a lot of people are trading it, so we're still doing some analysis on it, but it could prove some good numbers, and maybe it comes back and joins my trading list again, all right? But as of right now, it looks like it needs some kind of pullback to head higher at this point. And if it wants a more dramatic pullback, well, we can curl over this 2 hour, and you're noticing one thing. It's on the center line right now. So if we saw that resistance come in early on in the week, I'd be paying attention to my weekly expected moves on Patreon for where that weekly expected move is. See that curl down, maybe it curls back up. So even though this 2 hour could go negative with a few 30-minute selling bars here, we actually could see either a divergence form. Okay, we come down, test that low, maybe double bottom, maybe a little bit lower. We see that divergence come in, boom. Okay, there's our little trigger. This thing might be a little bit bullish after earnings. Okay. And then the other side would be, well, what if this just wants to curl down and curl back up? Well, that would be brief. We would just see that immediately curl back up on this 2 hour. I'd be paying attention closer to a 30-minute for AMD for some shorter term pushes to the upside. That is going to be completely different just because, well, I got some bad news with earnings. So bad news with earnings, even though the numbers were very good, and this is why earnings is something you don't really want to mess too much with. It's because it's a 50-50 flip. Look, green number, downward on the price action there because they released some other news with that info. So it seems like almost every every company is going to do that, release some kind of info with the earnings that is causing the opposite of what the numbers are saying kind of reaction. So what I'm paying attention to here is we're starting to get close to the center line. Remember, we've been marking off this 453.08 for quite some time, and notice that we gapped below it with that earnings because this is a very important level. So what could we be doing? Well, we actually might see that positivity fully go test it and then roll over, but really all I have to do is pay attention to this MACD curling down into negative territory. Maybe we test this low, make a new one, pay attention to my weekly range. If I got a little 30-minute divergence down here, that could curl up the 2 hour. So what does the 2 hour look like then? Well, the 2 hour has been pretty beat up. All right, 2 hours been pretty beat up, so it's well down into negative territory at this point. So even if we get a big reaction here, you have to be open to a lower high at that point because this could just curl up towards the center line and curl down again. So just be careful with this one. But it looks like some kind of 30-minute divergence could form that could give us some kind of nice setup. So just pay attention to that. If we start to retake 453.08, then we actually could see a continued trend here, but I just want you to be careful because the 2 hour is well into negative territory. So that's going to take a lot of time to really confirm that negative trend over time. We do also have Google and Microsoft for those weekly expected moves, just so you know that if you want to join the Patreon and get those weekly expected moves. All right, and then in the course, we actually give you a method to make your own weekly expected moves for any stock that you want to look at. So any stock that you are paying attention to, you can make a range for using the information that you get in the course, and you'll get a better knowledge about these indicators and everything like that. So it's very, very good. But as of right now, I just wanted to show you TLT. We have a little bit of divergence right here, which is saying, hey, this could roll up that daily MACD. Okay, what's that daily looking like? Well, it's been beat up for a long time, so maybe it does need some kind of pullback, some kind of bounce to get us out of these oversold or away from oversold conditions at this point. You have a little divergence here. That means we could see a reaction up. I would expect our first resistance to come in at 90.34 if we're going to see a good move here. So if we're able to get above 89.50, I would say 90.34 is what I'm paying attention to, but you can see a prolonged reaction here. You have some 2 hour divergence, so we could see a full move all the way up to something like 92, and I'd really pay attention to TLT this week. As we do get the Fed rate decision, maybe we get some kind of news that actually converts people into some bond buyers. We see TLT make an upward move, and those yields start to back off. Another reason we could be seeing downside early on in the week is because of this move on Friday in the dollar. Notice that the SPY was actually green and the dollar is green. We talked about this in the previous video, but this actually breaking out is a sign that we're going to see some negativity. But what if that's brief? We have to pay attention if that's brief, and then we see a more dramatic pullback for the dollar, which could be a good thing for the stock market. So if you're trying to learn this stuff, pretty much it's if the dollar goes down, the stock market goes up. But we want to pay attention to times where the dollar is going up while the stock market is going up. That tells you that there is some insider selling in here, and very well could be the retail traders are holding the bags at this moment. So this is still a time to be very, very cautious. This is a signal you want to pay attention. Any breakout of the dollar means that crash could be on, and that's why we're going to talk about volatility. But I'm really leaning towards some kind of pop in the dollar, and then we see that start to smooth out, start to go down, and then we see a bigger bounce in the overall market. The real bounce is what I've been calling it. Now, the volatility here, we said to pay attention to the VIX once it gets to a level of 15. Where's it at? 1502. So you have to pay attention at this point. If we can use the 200 as support, we very well could see this thing just start to skyrocket. We could, but we have so much data, so many earnings coming out that most likely people will be hesitant to say, oh, we're going to crash this thing down, right? It seems like we have too much news going on that most likely it's going to take the entire week to dictate whether or not we are actually going in an upward direction or downward. So that's why you want to be open to both ways at this point and know that volatility can come in early here. Now, why could volatility come in early? Well, you're testing the 200, you're testing the 50 at the same time. Now, those haven't crossed. They're actually like barely not crossing, but it is rejecting as of right now, which means positivity can come in. So I think if we see some selling and that's brief, we actually could see a prolonged move for a little bit of time here, maybe into the middle of May. And then I'll be paying attention to more data to be released. Now, the reason I'm talking about volatility increasing is because I just showed you the divergences on the SPY, the Qs. Apple looks like it wants to turn down. A bunch of stuff looks like it needs to pull back on the 30-minute or 2-hour scale. And what am I seeing on the VIX? I am seeing a divergence down here on the MACD, on the RSI down here at the same time, okay? So pay attention because volatility could come in early on in the week. That could shake a lot of people out, and then that's just some kind of bear trap up here, and then we see that actually fall off. So that's what I'm paying attention to for volatility. And then if that does happen, I'm going to be looking for some 2-hour divergences again, maybe down towards this gap fill around 13. We've been talking about that. So if we're able to break down below 15 and this isn't the moment for a crash, well, 13 looks like a good level to pay attention. Maybe we get some kind of bigger pop and we see that drop off, but I'm overall thinking maybe this lasts all the way until we test 1212 again. I think that very well could be possible after all the news that we get this week. So pay attention to volatility. That thing can scale up, but we just want to see, is it rolling back down on the 2-hour? Is it rolling back down into negative territory maybe by Wednesday? Well, that could be telling because we could get some kind of big push down and then see a bounce in volatility and then see some kind of 2-hour divergence by 1212. So the levels to pay attention to, 13, 1212 to the downside. Upside, I think volatility comes in pretty quick this week. So the main takeaway here is on the macro side, it looks like we could curl up into positive territory, but maybe we need a stronger base or at least a pullback before that happens. And it really looks like from the technicals here that Monday and Tuesday, we very well might see some kind of pullback. Now, is that going to set up some higher lows and we're going to curl up on those 30 minutes, or are we going to make those 2-hour divergences? I know I'm leaning towards the 2-hour divergences, but I am just going to react based on what the price action does and trade like water out there. If you're part of this channel, you probably know we trade like water. We just move around the rocks, pay attention to the signals, and move. We are adaptable. We are bullish, and then we're bearish, and then we're bullish, and we're bearish. It's a very, very good mentality to have in a market like this. And I just wanted to say I really appreciate you guys watching. I really, really do. Thank you guys for liking, subscribing. You guys are fantastic about that. Make sure to grab the course if you're interested in learning this stuff down in the description, as it is on a discount for just like a week or so. And other than that, I just hope you guys have all the luck in the world trading this week, and I hope you have a good night. Peace.